Christy Kimbrel. I have terrible lighting. Let me turn on my leather light here. Oh, man. All right. See if that's any better. Kind of. Okay. We're going to go ahead and get started. I like to start on time. It is almost exactly 7 o'clock. We'll have some more people rolling in. I know this is a webinar, and if you can excuse the bandage on my nose, and I'll fix some of these flyaways so they're not too distracting. We're going to run through some of the things that you're going to look for and how to become an investor. Whether you're a savvy investor or just trying to figure out maybe some good vehicles to take advantage of the market. This is going to give you a good overview of maybe some of the whys and hows around what we do to help people do that, and answer some of the questions and myths about investing. So without any further ado, it is 7 o'clock, so thank you for being on time. My name is Christy Kimbrel. I am the founder of the Exceptional Home Team. I have been in residential real estate sales for over 20 years now. I have 5 rental properties myself. I have dabbled throughout my career with flips and holds and buying and selling real estate for fun, keeping some, not keeping some, long-term, short-term plans. So I get real passionate about this, and there is a way to make real estate work for you, just depending on what your goals are. So hopefully we can cover this as an overview. If you have any questions, there is a question and answer box as part of Zoom's features. If you want to check that out, there's a chat. I'm going to actually open the question and answer box so I can keep an eye on it. If you have questions as I go along, please feel free to shout out. I will also turn the chat on here so that we can keep things going. Let's see, all panelists and attendees. So I'll try to watch all these things. I've been told I talk fast. I kind of like that. I like to keep things moving. Your time's valuable, and I want to make sure that you get a lot of good content in this. And just, I guess, slow me down if you need anything. So without further ado, we'll get started. So welcome to the Investor Workshop. I'm going to go ahead and screen share, which at least I remember to do that, right? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so now we have the Investor Workshop going. I got my Q&A, question and answers, and I'm going to get out my chat box again because I opened it and then closed it. Okay, so now, welcome to the Investor Workshop. I've said that 4 times now. Why are we here today? Well, you're going to answer that question, and feel free to share in the group chat if you want to talk about what things you're passionate about, or what questions you really want to answer. Hopefully I'm going to cover the most of it. So if you aren't as knowledgeable about what you're going to be getting in today's information, or you're not even sure what to ask at, we'll start there too. So I'm going to reference some of the content that's off the Millionaire Real Estate Investor book. That's a Keller Williams book written by Gary Keller. It's a fantastic book and resource if you're just starting. If you are listening to this and you want a free copy of that book, send me either a text, an email, text or email works. I will put my text and email address in the chat box, and you can reach out to me. Let me know that you'd like to receive a copy of it. Give me an address, or I can just drop it off somewhere, and we'll make sure you get a copy. So what caused you to start thinking about investing in real estate? Usually it stems from some place in your family or friends, or just looking for some passive streams of income, and why am I here? So my personal belief system is I'm big into educating on finances. I think it's a missed opportunity in our school system that a lot of people don't know much about real estate. And, it's a great vehicle to grow wealth. And I believe we've got some facts in here, but people who own homes, are 434 times more wealthy, or, have a higher net worth than those who rent. And I take it a few steps further. And if those are good vehicles for wealth building in general, why not, multiply that and double down? It is a place that's near and dear to my heart. It is an area I understand. And I think that whenever you start to really understand something, it becomes easier to put your money there and eventually get to an opportunity where you can create some real wealth. So I'm happy to share my specific stories and examples of how I've gotten from where I was to where I'm at. But I know that when I sat down, there was a 15-year plan in mind, and that seemed a little daunting. It doesn't have to be that long, and yet when we put them in place, they're extremely doable. And now I'm in year 20 of that 15-year plan, and everything's coming to fruition, and it is exactly as we thought. And so I get real excited to share that with people, because when I started, it certainly didn't feel like it was a sure thing. And I think that that's a normal reaction. So I'm going to try to help you feel more and more comfortable with how to invest in real estate. So again, I'm Christy Kimbrel, if you've just chimed in, with the Exceptional Home Team, and I'm glad you're here. Okay, so our company's values, the Exceptional Home Team, our mission is to ensure that everyone knows that your real estate goals are our #1 priority. So we want to add value everywhere we go. We believe in gratitude, attitude, and giving, a fearless commitment to excellence, and we believe that the golden rule prevails. We believe that no matter what the circumstance, it's about education, sharing, and guidance. So I have told people even this week, I don't care if you buy a house or not, right? I'll tell you if I think it's a good idea. I'll tell you if I don't. If you use me, great. If you don't, I'm a big fan of people keeping real estate. So when you meet with me, if you talk about selling your house and you've got an opportunity, if you were to hold on to it, to create a rental property for yourself for long-term planning, I'm going to suggest that. And I think that that's what anybody would want in a realtor. Certainly that's what I would want. And that's the kind of service we provide. Okay, so what we're going to cover, we're going to talk about the possibilities, go through the myth understandings, real estate investing, current statistics, and then your big why. What are you hoping to gain from this? How do you investigate and maybe share that with others so you can figure out, why you might be doing this? I think that if we begin with the end in mind and understand truly why we're doing something, everything kind of falls into place from there. I think people will overestimate what they can do in a year and completely underestimate where they could be in 5. So I think when we understand what your big, hairy, audacious goal is, it'll be easier for us to put a plan in place, and hope that by going through it, you'll get the opportunity to maybe even self-discover why you are here and what you really hope to gain. And then proven systems. What to buy, how to buy it, okay? We'll give you kind of a general overview. And of course, if you want specifics about your situation, we can go through that on another time, either after this class or set up a time outside. Okay, so the 5 myth understandings between you and financial wealth, right? Then investing is complicated. Well, it's only as complicated as you make it, meaning you've got to start, understanding it. I think that anything foreign to us can seem complicated without truly starting to investigate. So congratulations. I'm so glad you guys took the first step in getting some information on what investing in real estate is all about. The best investments require knowledge most people don't have, meaning like, I don't even know where to start, right? Well, your best investments will always be areas you already understand. And now I'm sounding redundant. You are beginning to understand that process. And truly, when if you have a trusted professional in your corner, that can also help speed up the process for you and at least start you in the right direction. Investing is risky. I'll lose money. Well, investing by definition isn't risky. If you make poor decisions or hasty decisions, or maybe decisions based on emotions rather than logic, you're going to end up into a place where I'm in the middle of a webinar. Good to see you. Sorry. Okay, that was my husband who didn't realize I was teaching class. So, okay, investing is risky. So investing by definition is not risky. I think that, again, when you understand it and you put money in, it's supposed to be a long-term plan. Investment is typically, in real estate especially, is not a short-term game. By default, the longer you sit and hold with this and let it sit and do its thing, it is a little bit like a slow cooker or a crock pot, right? It's unlikely to burn. It's just going to sit and simmer. You can have some flexibility with it. So investing in real estate, I don't think is risky at all. And if you make decisions based on emotion rather than logic, that's about the only time you can get into trouble. And same thing goes for when you've got, renters, and you start making decisions on renters and who you're gonna allow to live in your properties. If you have some standard rules on who that's going to be, yeah, you really only get into trouble when you break them. And usually that comes with some sort of sob story. So that's the long-term, those are some of the details that most of my clients, I feel, get nervous about is, I don't know that I want to be a landlord, right? Or the phone call in the middle of the night. And that really doesn't happen too often. And in my 20 years, the phone call in the middle of the night has never happened. Most of the time properties have maybe one issue a year. That would be a lot, and especially if you buy properties that are in decent condition. That really doesn't come into play. So we'll go there. Successful investors are able to time the market. There is great opportunities to be found in any market. So in successful investing, the timing can find you. If you identify what you're looking for and put it out there, it will start to show up, much like when you're looking and shopping for a car. But there's going to be opportunities even in markets like this where there's going to be somebody who really needs to sell, or if you've got a realtor that's good at finding the deals. There are always, I sold one yesterday. I'm going to be listing one next week. That's going to be great opportunities for an investor to come in and put their polish on it. There's so few people that understand the market enough and even how to update a home. But trust me, and this isn't a class on flipping either. You can do that. You can put in updates, but most of the time with investing, you're looking at a long-term plan. And so that's a invest and hold plan. So we can talk about the pros and cons in any market. So all the good investments are taken. Every market has its share of good opportunities that are still left. Some markets are harder than others, but when there's a plethora and there's many, many, many opportunities to invest, that's when doubt starts to creep in. I mean, could you imagine trying to invest in 2009 when the market was low and you were just scared it was going to go lower? Right? So it's hard to time it perfectly. So when you've got a long-term plan in place, or at least a backup plan to where I wouldn't ever in the near future be forced to sell this property, you control the market you sell in much more than potentially the one you buy in. And so it's just about diving in and investing, just like with the stock market. You might buy when stocks are high. Well, as long as you sell when they're high, you didn't make a mistake. But we certainly don't want to sell or buy when they're high and sell low. Like that's the opposite game plan. So this is definitely funds that you want to have need little access to and are comfortable holding and only making a smart decision when it comes to freeing your money back up. Anybody have any, questions so far? Okay, I'm gonna go on. Okay, discovering your big why. So, my big why was to fund my kids' school. So I really wanted to be able to not have to worry about the price tag that they were saying schools were going to be at when my child was born in the early 2000s. And I thought that would be atrocious for schools to cost $100,000 a year. And when I did the math on what I would have to save monthly if I started right then in order to pay for even half of her schooling, there just wasn't a way where it seemed possible, and it was not really very much fun. So when I said I decided on a 15-year plan, I started identifying opportunities to where I could invest in real estate, have it paid off in 15 years by someone else, and that would be the vehicle for their college tuition. So 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, with these properties, I bought one with each child in mind, right? So by the time they go to school, they'll be paid off. They can either live in it, use the rents to help their tuition, or we could sell it and liquidate it. So when I set this up, each property we put about 10% down, and we put them on plans that they would be paid off. So they didn't really cash flow much. They cash flowed maybe $100 a month. So it was kind of a break even. But now they're cash flowing anywhere between $300 and $800 a month, depending on the property. And they're almost paid off, right? I owe about $60,000 on each one, and they're all worth about $300,000, and someone else has paid for it. So you know what? By the time my first one's in school or they're all paid off, I'm going to have about $70,000 annually coming in as rent, and after taxes and such, that should cover most of school, at least for the first one, if not the second. And for me, that was really important, and I could see the light at the end of the tunnel and how I could make that happen. Then when they're done with school, heck, right? Who knows what I'll do with the extra money? I could donate it. I could, start a 501c3 and, do some sort of charitable contributions and create a bigger momentum behind it. But it's really just about how do we use these vehicles to get where you want to go. And and maybe it's just as simple as, I just need to plan for retirement. Maybe it's just for yourself. But a little money now can go a long way in the future. And it's always someplace where you could look into, I don't know, can you move into it someday? There are certain tax ramifications for that. So that isn't usually plan A. But those are the things that you want to look at, and certainly share with anybody that you're planning to go into business with these, a partner or spouse, or a business partner even. I have families that go in together, and if they can't afford to do one, they do one with another family and split it. So, okay. So big goals. So the big specific goals are going to be specific and measurable. They're going to be targets for your big why. So when you start to identify it, try to come up with something specific, like I want to pay for college for my 3 kids, or I want these properties to net me $70,000 a year. And in fact, if I would have had to put a number on it back then, it would be, I want to generate $100,000 of passive income annually, right? At the time, I was going to generate $600, and I had to get to a point where it was going to be 100 and lay out that plan. And then we do the proven systems and strategies that are going to help you hit that goal. So we're going to set up proven systems, right, by using the book and the tutorials we have here, using the content of this course, using the expertise that I have in my history of helping people do the same thing year over year, so that we can help identify a plan using a strategy that will work so that you can accomplish that goal. And then big habits. What are your habits? Are you in the habit of saving extra money, right? Do you already have some good savings set aside where you just need to know the right tool to invest in? Are you sick of the stock market? Do you not believe in the political environment or the health environment of our country so that you want it out of the stock market? All of these are going to be reasons and types of habits that are going to start to fuel your path to your big why when you're specific and clear, and then start to take action. So maybe it's as simple as just setting up a search so you can start to understand and educate yourselves on some of the more entry-level homes in the market. So what actions are you going to do daily now that are going to help move you forward towards your goal? And those are some of the things we can help you lay out. Okay. There are unique benefits to investing in real estate in contrast to stocks, mutual funds, money markets. So houses, the neat thing is they're real property. It's an able investment. So its value never goes to zero, not in the real market. You can depreciate it on taxes down to zero, but it's always going to have a tangible value to it. And purchasing real estate can be leveraged, meaning you get to use someone else's money, right? You get to call a bank. You can use that property as collateral to do other things. So there's a lot of advantages to residential real estate that you don't have when it comes to stocks or money market accounts. You can't go live in your stock account. You certainly could go live in one of your rental properties if you fell on hard times, heaven forbid, or one of your family members did. So it's kind of a cool way to look at it. So most able investments are going to be, and I'll read these with you, they're going to be accessible, meaning anybody can buy it, right? There's no educational standard or degree you need to have in order to purchase it. It's appreciable, so it's going to, in general, increase in value over time. Rentable, right? So someone else can live in it and you can make money off of it monthly. Remember, you do get to pay tax on that. It is income tax. And it's improvable, right? You can make personal improvements to these properties and create some sweat equity, if we haven't heard that term in a while, so that you can create increased value in your property as your ownership goes on. It's fairly stable. There's a low rise and a slow fall, right? So you can see these things coming. There isn't usually a drastic overnight. Even the pandemic, yes, it was a drastic overnight switch that got switched back on quite quickly. So it is a fairly stable environment to put your money, where the stock market can just literally crash in one day and put you in a position where any of the profits you have could go away really quickly. And this you can really see coming. So it's livable, right? We talked about that already. It's a shelter. I mean, you can actually occupy it. Can't do that with stocks. Deductible, depreciable, deferrable. Deductible, depreciable, and deferring are all tax benefits of owning rental properties. You'll want to check with your tax consultant. At certain income levels, the ability to write off real estate as a depreciable or deductible asset changes unless you're actually in the field of real estate. So given that I'm a realtor, I can write off many properties. I haven't hit a limit yet, and I don't know if there is one, but you would have some sort of a limit as a private investor if you are generally maybe a plumber or something like that, or you work in the stock market and you want to invest in real estate. So it's just something to check on. Okay. Any questions? Okay, don't forget, you can raise your hand and ask the question box or put it in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them in a timely fashion. Okay, so stocks, mutual funds, money market. So we go through the start value. I'm gonna get my little pointer out because I think it's super fun. So stocks are gonna, if we all start with $100,000 start value, the cost to acquire said item is going to be stocks, mutual funds, and money markets are all going to be $100,000. Investment properties are going to be around that 20% down payment. Now, depending on the property, it could go up to 25 or even 30%, and that has to do with multifamily properties. So just be sure to check on that. But then you've got carrying costs. So there's going to be fees that are acquired with stocks, mutual funds. The mortgage is offset by the rent. So you typically don't have a monthly cost to own an investment property, at least not one that's a direct cost monthly. The goal is to have it be covered and not cost you anything annually, rather than just your initial down payment. So your carrying costs, we just talked about that. So other costs, you could with investment properties have some vacancy, have a large repair or water problem. I've run into that before. And those could be annual costs that could, the best case scenario is just net you a zero for the year. So hopefully you've got enough income coming in annually that if you run into that problem every couple years, you're still at a net neutral, because at the end, the ideal goal is to get the property paid off by someone else, so that you have a $100,000 asset you paid 20 grand for, and once the loan is done, you have, even if there's zero depreciation, a $100,000 asset now own free and clear that you paid 20 grand for, so you didn't have to pay the other 80. Make sense? Okay, income. Oops, I somehow totally slid this. Okay, income year over year is going to be 8% on average with stocks. Mutual funds, you can read across the board. You've got typically 5% appreciation. That's in an average over probably 25 or 30 years. It used to be about 7 to 10%, depending on the time of year. I think single family was 7%, townhouses were 5%, and condos were 3% before the Great Recession or the real estate decline. And so those numbers are taking that into account. So 5% appreciation. Other income, there isn't really any other income that comes in from your stocks and money markets. However, you do obviously have rent, and rent goes up with general appreciation and inflation, I should say, annually. So 1 to 2% per year. Year over year, it's not much, but it is, it does, over the next 15 years, it can take a considerable jump when you look at where you start compared to where you finish. Okay, your adjusted return on investment. That's going to be taking into account all the expenses and such. If you can see here, your investment property is going to be a 25% adjusted return on investment, meaning you put in $20,000 and like I said, now it's worth 100, right? And so what's your potential loss between vacancies and things like that? I mean, you stand to lose everything here, right? Only 40% here, and money markets are 0. So there's going to be pros and cons that you're going to experience with any opportunity to create wealth. And it's just about minimizing or at least understanding the risks so you can make a smart and at least an informed decision, if that makes sense. So let's see, anything else I need to cover there? I think we're good. All right, so then moving on to the next slide. So I don't know if you guys know Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and the cash flow quadrant. This talks about the 4 ways to produce income. So, right, we can start off as an employee, meaning you have a job. You can be a business owner, so you own a system. Self-employed means that you own a job, right? That's what I am with real estate. I get to go to work and I own the job of selling houses. I like to consider myself a business owner because I do own the systems and other people can plug into them. And then you go into investor where you own investments and the investments work for you. My money is working while I sleep, right? So those houses, whether I get up and go to work or not, are continuing to bring in money, raise value, and pay down debt. And that's what it's like to be an investor. So most millionaires have 7 streams of money coming in at all times. So where is your other stream of income? And is it working when you're not? Or do you have a job, right? If you aren't making money on the side, then you're limiting your potential to build wealth by the number of hours you're willing to work. So one of the amazing things about this is you're going to be able to create another stream of income, albeit it will be a small stream right now that feels like a big risk for a small reward, but you just let it sit there in the slow cooker, and before you know it, you look like you were pretty smart 10, 15 years ago, okay? So this graph, this example is from the Robert Kiyosaki books. When we move on to this next one, this is going to be in the MREA, a Millionaire Real Estate Investor book. So this is going to talk about market value, and as that increases, you're going to build equity, right? Year over year, your equity is going to increase because we're paying down the debt, right? And this initial investment, this is that 20 grand. That's going to stay the same over and over. You don't ever have to really put in additional money other than repairs. But that's going to still hopefully net out at your end of the year to still be profitable. So you're just reinvesting those profits. But eventually towards the end of 15 to 30 years later, all of a sudden you have all this equity and the property's paid off and you didn't do it. And that's what gets me excited, right? Why wouldn't you want to own a $300,000 asset free and clear that you paid 20 grand for, or 60 if it was 20% down of 300 and I'm being fair. But then 15 years from now, that $300,000 property would be worth closer to $500,000 or $550,000, just depending on that 5% annualized average appreciation. Okay, big words all together. My apologies, it's late. Okay, moving on. So, this is going to be in your leverage chart. We're going to calculate your first year's rental appreciation, debt payoff, cash flow. So we've got vacancies, expenses, debt service. If we're going to buy it right, we're going to pay it down and we're going to pay it off. And eventually we're going to create cash flow, right? And we've got 100% cash flow minus any vacancies or expenses. And the debt service is referring to the mortgage, right? So any loans that you're still paying off. So this is just going to be another way of looking at it. But your tenant's going to pay it down. Again, it's beautiful. Okay, why do people invest in real estate? So the return on investment, there's less out of pocket and more to put in your pocket. Some people do it for the tax write-offs. Remember to check with your tax consultants. To grow your net worth through equity, long-term net worth goals, do you have them? Do you know how to calculate yours? If you don't, Google calculate my net worth or net worth calculator, and you'll get a simple system that will help you establish what your baseline is now. And then, hey, why don't we multiply it by 5 or 10 and then set you on a plan to do that through real estate? You might be amazed at how quickly those numbers start to change. And we can 10 to 15 years from now get you looking a whole lot better than maybe you feel about your financial future right now. Okay. College education savings. Yeah, that hits the nail on the head for me, right? That's what I wanted to do. So there's no better method, in my opinion, to invest your money, because it takes so little down to own such a large asset that holds its value, rather than like the intangibles to me of the stock market. No, don't get me wrong. I have a certain amount of money invested in the stock market as well. I think it's smart to diversify in all areas. So I don't own all in the same city. I don't own all the same type of product, but I do get passionate about what I understand, which is real estate. And then the easy set it and forget it, right? That's the Instapot, which is the stock market, which if you've cooked with an Instapot, they can burn your food fast. Okay. Moving on, so tax write-offs. These are all the things you can write off. I'm not going to get into that, but be sure to talk to your tax professional. But there's a lot of different ways you can write off depreciation and personal property and improvements. So pretty much anything that you have to do with that property, you can write off as long as you qualify for taking write-offs. So proven system. So each of these common types of property are considered residential from a lending perspective. So you've got condos, single family, which is 1 unit, like a duplex or fourplex. Anything larger than a 4-unit building is going to be considered commercial. I personally own 2 duplexes, a single family, technically a condo, which is like a townhouse, and 1 other single family home. And so it's just different ways to look at it. For instance, in San Antonio, some duplexes or fourplexes are hard to find. In Minnesota, depending on the area, they can be a challenge. So it's just kind of trying to understand maybe what the right property is for you. There's some pros and cons to all of them. We can certainly cover that another time. Okay, so here's some of the pros and cons. I guess we'll go through it. I forgot these were our next slide, so forgive me. So of course, the lower purchase price on a condo or townhouse, you're gonna be able to get in. That's a lower barrier to entry. The maintenance is included with many of them, like the outside maintenance. So siding, snow and lawn care, the roof, anything like that is gonna be covered by the association fee. So then you kind of minimize the number of moving parts to a property. And then there's more amenities. Typically they're newer, they might be a little more in line with what renters are envisioning for themselves. Some of the cons, you've got the HOA dues that can be costly, so that can inhibit your cash flow and what you could be making off of it, given a certain rent. So you only own a percentage of the land possibly, or no land with it, and then typically less appreciation. So historically, condos and townhouses have appreciated less than single family. And those are just some of the facts. So when we move into a single family home, they're going to be the easiest, a little easier to resell, and the easiest of all of our categories. They're typically surrounded by other owner occupied units. There's not usually a chunk of them that creates a high rental environment. And then you get a higher percentage of appreciation than the condos or townhouses we talked about. The cons are going to be there's only 1 unit to generate income. They typically cost a little bit more. So your profit per unit might be a little lower on this than, of course, like our 2-unit or 4-unit buildings. And you have 100% loss when they're vacant, right? You would with the last one too, but with our duplexes and fourplexes, hopefully that's not all vacant at the same time. So there's a little bit of buffer against risk of vacancies. I don't typically have vacancies. My units do rent. They're usually in good rental areas, and I tend to have my rents a little bit light because I'm in this for the long game, and the happier I keep tenants, then the less turnover I have, the less wear and tear on the property, and the less I do now pay a management company, even though I do this for others, but I have my own rented out because I just don't take very good care of my own personal stuff like I do my clients. So I pay a rental management company, and a typical fee for that is going to be 1 month's rent. Well, if I limit how many times people are moving in and out, I am already making 12% more annually by keeping somebody more than 1 year. Does that make sense? So I choose to look at it that way, and you can do it any way you like. However, my properties are also undervalued right now because the values are so crazy. I'm doing a bunch of rental increases. So that's something you can look forward to. We've got duplexes, fourplexes. Somehow those pros and cons got out of there. Duplexes, obviously, you've got two sets there. So, you've got 2 units, so you always have a little bit of coverage. Unfortunately, you have double of everything that could go wrong when it comes to repairs. You've got 2 furnaces, 2 washers and dryers, 2 dishwashers. You get the point. So you've got a little bit more. Typically, they tend to rent for a little bit less than their counterparts in a single-family home, but that's okay. You're getting typically right now they don't cost double. They're getting close back to that. But back in the last recession, my duplexes cost about $225, and for the same size property, I could buy it was maybe $175. So it only cost me an extra $50,000 for the second unit. Right now, they're about $3 to $325 in value. So we're talking a little bit closer to $175, but each individual unit would be about $200 at a minimum. So if there's still a savings there, and in the past, in real high markets, you're essentially getting double, you pay double. So different ways to look at it. And then fourplex, they generate usually a high cash flow. They're unlikely to all be empty at the same time. You do have 4 of everything. You get a little more maintenance, you get a little more turnover. It's a little more like a part-time job to run them or deal with tenant issues. Typically, those tenants in a fourplex are maybe going to be a shorter-term tenant. Single-family homes tend to attract people that are maybe a little more permanent mindset if they're looking to rent a house rather than renting something that feels a little more temporary. So just something to consider when you're identifying what might be the right property for you is we can help you look at that specific situation. So proven systems are, you want to know the value, you want to find the right opportunity, and then make deals. So we're going to help you through that. We have property management company versus self-management. I talked a little bit about that. Let's see, you're gonna, I guess I already talked about that, but self-management, if you have a property management company come in, the benefit's gonna be is they're gonna stick to your rules. You're gonna hear when you interview renters, their sad story, they're this, they're that, I know I have 5 kids and this is only a 2-bedroom, but can we make it work? It's hard to say no and stand your ground when there's not that middleman. And essentially it's just like having, the car sales rep call their manager and say no to the deal, right? Nobody wants to say no to someone in their face. So my property manager can say, no, you know what? We're really not going to do that. We're only going to rent to families of this size or less. I'm really sorry. We can't do that. There's not enough space here. So it's just something that you can choose. And certainly if your concern is that maintenance or doing check-ins and all that, it's really easy to hire it out. And it can still be put into the math so that it can be a profitable decision. Okay, so your next steps are going to be make sure to read the Real Estate Investor book. I'm happy to send you a copy of that. Just email me or text me directly some contact information and I'll get that to you. Find a financial professional, understand who your tax advisors are and what the tax ramifications might be for you and your specific situation. Your financial planner might be a good sounding board. Typically, they're going to encourage you to stay in the stock market. I know my financial planner never says it's a good idea. However, I've done really well in both arenas. And so just kind of, make sure that you understand who you're asking for advice. The people I find that have the worst advice would be like my mom, no offense if she's watching. She's a real conservative lady who cares about me a ton and doesn't want to see me stressed out or in a bad way. So she'd put me in a bubble if she could. So no, you don't need to go do that. However, it's some of the most exciting things I've done. I would ask other people who own properties. If they don't own properties and they never have, I don't consider them a very good source for advice because they don't really know, or they've allowed their assumptions about something they don't understand to make a decision for them. So I think there's enough people out there that are either current or past investors in real estate that could give you some really realistic feedback and what your expectations should be. So make sure to seek out and understand who's giving you the advice. talk to a mortgage professional, start to understand the finances behind it. We can run through some of those if you call me directly, like what payments are going to be, will something cash flow, how do I calculate ROI, what kind of ROI am I looking for? Typically, any investor is going to look for 12 to 15% annually. There are some mortgage calculators or investment property ROI calculator. You could Google that and you can see how that works. So your initial investment of $20,000, if it rents for this and we have 10% vacancy, I actually think that's a little high, maybe use 5% vacancy. What is your cash on cash return on investment annually? And that's how you'll understand that target of 12 to 15% at a minimum. And then the next step is going to be for us to get together. So let's meet, let's talk about your specifics, understand what you're looking for, understand what some of your personal fears are. If I didn't address them already, or if even I addressed them and you still think, man, it's still a real legitimate concern of mine, I think that it's absolutely something we should talk about. So those are some of the next steps you can do to continue your education. Certainly, like I mentioned before, we can get you set up so that you can find some of the bank-owned properties or short sales and be introduced to them. And then we can go from there. Any questions? I hope you found this interesting. There often aren't a lot of questions that come through the chat box, and that's normal. However, I encourage you, please text. I usually get quite a few text messages in the evening after I do these, so feel free to do that. I encourage you to. We are real excited about helping people do this. I will reach out to each of you, and thank you for being and attending over the next week or so. It usually takes me a little bit to get through everybody, so I will reach out and connect. Some of the things we're doing, as I mentioned, we like to give back to the community. So we are doing a back to school giveaway. We're going to do that, I think it's September 26th. That's going to be all day where you're going to call in to win some of these electronic gadgets that you see here, Echo Dot, Show, a Ring doorbell, some of these digital home devices that make things pretty fun. I will put the Facebook link to our event in the chat box. So go ahead and click on our event and feel free to participate. Would love to talk to you that day. All you have to do to enter to win is call my cell phone. So that's a real fun way. Yeah, and then that's really what we have going on. So what I would love to do, these are our upcoming buyer and seller seminars. So on September 22nd, we've got a seller workshop. And then we're going to go on to a home buyer workshop, and then again, how to buy and sell at the same time, and then back again to this one. So we try to run through it. So if you know somebody who could benefit from this information, we would love to have you invite them. I will get you the link for that workshops too. I will post this. That's going to be found on our website. So let's see, here's our home buyer workshop. This is the next one. You can also go to the exceptionalhometeam.com/event and be able to find the list of these. And then, of course, I really want to thank you all for being here. It's been a pleasure dropping into your iPad or living room this evening. Hopefully you found this helpful. I hope I didn't go too fast. I say that every time, but I tend to still zip right through this content. I just get really excited about it. So if you love us, leave us a review. Facebook, Instagram, that's the best way to give back for any of the energy that you felt I gave you in knowledge today that is helpful in your journey. If you've got a professional realtor in your life that you trust, wonderful. If you don't, I encourage you to reach out. I would love to talk to you about your goals, and let me know if there's anything you need in the interim, and hopefully we'll see you in a couple weeks, if not sooner. Thanks a lot.